What's up, everybody? I'm going to record TEM244 here. Been having some technical difficulties, but I think that I have figured them out. I hope everybody is doing well. It was in the 70s here yesterday, and the wind chill was right around freezing this morning as I took my son to school. So, a weather roller coaster, which is, I guess, the way it works nowadays. Uh, okay, here we go. I'm going to, yes, it is. I'm going to record over here too. And here we go. Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Musician, a coaching service, podcast, and blog preparing today's musicians for tomorrow's realities. This is TEM 244, titled The Most Dangerous Step of the Creative Process. Is your music kicking ass, but your music career is not? Let TEM Coaching design you a personalized plan to help level up the skills needed to start crushing the business side of music. Visit temcoaching.com to take control of your career today. And as always, thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for TEM. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. How the hell is it almost Thanksgiving? Is it just me, or has this fall flown by? It feels in some ways like the school year just started and it's almost Thanksgiving, and by extension, almost Christmas, and almost 2022. Yeah, crazy. TEM Book Club is coming. In January, I am launching a book club, and the first book that we will be reading is Atomic Habits by James Clear. This book impacted me as a performer, as a music business coach, as a parent, as a learner, like everything. It was life changing, which is a totally overused, usually not true term. It changed every aspect of my life, and so we're gonna read that book together. There is going to be a live hang. It's going to be free to participate, but it will require registration. There's going to be a very limited number of spots. I will be announcing the specifics at the TEM website, tem.fm, and I will also announce it here on the podcast, but it will be first come, first serve. And I hope to see a bunch of you there. I can't wait to talk about how we can apply the really powerful concepts and principles to our music career. So that's what we're going to be doing in the first installment of the TEM Book Club. Okay, TEM 244, the most dangerous step of the creative process. There is one step in the creative process that, in my experience, has more potential to go wrong than almost all of the other steps combined. It's the part of the process where there is the most self-doubt. When you start noticing everything wrong with what you are making, when you realize all of the other things you also have to do and wonder whether you should actually be doing those instead of this thing. That most dangerous step of the process is right before you share it with the world. Stephen Pressfield talks a lot about this in his wonderful book, Do the Work. From that book, quote, when Michael Crichton approached the end of a novel, so I've read, he used to start getting up earlier and earlier in the morning. He was desperate to keep his mojo going. He'd get up at 6, then 5, then 3:30, and 2:30 till he was driving his wife insane. Finally, he had to move out of the house. He checked into a hotel, the Kona Village, which ain't so bad, and worked around the clock till he'd finished the book. Michael Crichton was a pro. He knew that resistance was strongest at the finish. End quote. Side note, Do the Work will absolutely be a book that we read with the TEM Book Club sometime soon. So much actionable advice that applies directly to a portfolio career, which is all that we talk about here on TEM. Seth Godin calls it the hallway, which he defines as the time between when something is good enough and when we ship it and share it with the world. The important part of that is the good enough part. Godin doesn't describe it as perfect. He doesn't even describe it as done, because I can always convince myself that something can use just a couple of more tweaks or minor improvements. That means that I can always convince myself that it's not quite ready yet. I know that nothing can ever be perfect, so I never use the litmus test, is this perfect, before sharing something with the world. But I sometimes ask myself a different version of essentially the same question before sharing it, which is, could this be better? Of course it could be better. So if I use that litmus test to not ship something, it means I wasn't going to ship it and I was just looking for an excuse anyways. That's why the way Godin frames this is so incredibly powerful. The question, is this good enough, is the test you should be using almost all the time. Now, if you are a pacemaker manufacturer, you need to be holding yourself to a higher standard than, is this simply good enough? But if you are releasing a YouTube video or launching a new website or sharing a composition with the world, you shouldn't act like you're making pacemakers. The hallway is the worst place to hang out. When you know deep down that something is good enough, but you don't have the courage to share it with the world, it really sucks. I say that from experience. And not only does it suck, but it also means that you haven't started working on the next thing yet. So simply change your litmus test from, could this be better, to, is this good enough? And then ship it and then start making the next thing. All right, this week's quote comes from author Mark Twain. Keep away from people who try to belittle your ambitions. Small people always do that, but the really great make you feel that you too can become great. End quote. I'm sure this is true of all of us, but I have spent time with people who have made me feel like I could do anything. And I've also spent time with people who made me feel like I constantly had to justify even attempting to do new things. We have to do everything within our power to spend time with and collaborate with people who empower us and lift us up, people who challenge us to be better versions of ourselves. Sometimes we have people in close roles that we really can't do anything about, like family. So it's not necessarily as simple as just cutting out the people who make you justify yourself all the time, but we can intentionally carve out relationships and time with people who lift us up, and that's important. Finally, I've got a bonus quote for you. This one is from Simon Sinek, who I mentioned last week, and I included it in a very short blog post that I wrote on the Hits Academy blog over at andrewhits.com/blog. It's about mentorship and ties in beautifully with the Mark Twain quote that I just read. This blog post is titled What a Mentor Should Be, and it starts with that quote from Simon Sinek, and then I'll go on and read the rest of this short post for you. Simon Sinek said, quote, "A mentor is not someone who walks ahead of us and tells us how they did it. A mentor is someone who walks alongside us to guide us on what we can do." This is really profound and perfectly describes my relationship with Sam Palafian. The very first time we spoke, he made me feel like I was on the same journey as him, even though I was a starstruck 12-year-old tuba player who was just in awe. I didn't leave that Empire Brass concert and brief conversation with Sam believing I could do what he did someday. I left knowing I could do it, and there's a big difference. He seemed just as excited to meet me as I was to meet him. Equal footing from the jump. He treated me that same way throughout our entire relationship, from that 12-year-old kid he'd never met to his graduate teaching assistant to eventually being his brass quintet colleague who was touring the world myself. He treated me the same way, just walking alongside me and guiding me when needed. Not sure what I did to deserve having such an incredible mentor dropped into my lap. It's certainly nothing I did. But every single time I think about Sam, I am overcome with appreciation for having such an example walking next to me for 31 years. So as Mark Twain said, the really great make you feel that you too can become great. And that's what Sam made me feel from the moment that we met. I realize it's not as simple as just finding yourself a Sam Palafian, but I do believe that if we help others generously and frequently, that Sam-type people will find us and enter our lives. By the way, you can hear 2 whole episodes on Sam's incredible entrepreneurial career in TEM32 and TEM52. Sadly, we never got the third installment of that recorded before he passed away. But you can also hear me talk about his approach to producing in TEM174. The first time I was I was producing a recording session, I texted Sam and said, "What tips do you have?" And he said, "I'll call you in 5 minutes." And then he called and he said, "Do you have a pen and paper ready?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Okay, go." And then he fire hosed me for 10 straight minutes he was a very famous and accomplished producer. And I included all of the notes that I took. I shared those all in TEM 174, and links for all 3 of those episodes, plus the blog post I just read for you, in case you want to read it or share it with anyone, are in the show notes, which you can find as always at tem.fm. All right. Thank you to everyone for listening, subscribing, leaving a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get TEM, and simply for your attention, the most valuable commodity any of us have to give. TEM is produced by myself, Andrew Hitz, and is a part of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. The theme music for TEM is played by Ben Barron, Rich Kelly, Daniel Appel, and myself, Andrew Hitz. For show notes, the TEM blog, and to learn more about TEM coaching, please visit our new website, tem.fm. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can frequently catch episodes before they are officially released. And that's going to do it for another episode of The Entrepreneurial Musician. All right. Thank you for joining me. I had lots of quotes for that one. It's something that I think I'm going to do is just record the process of making TEM, and gets access to anybody who's subscribed to YouTube or who happens to catch it live on Facebook. Gives you access to the episodes early. And now I got to go and add the intro music and the outro music, and I got to master it, and then I got to post it in about like 9,000 places. And I do have the system down pretty well, but yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes work. But once I've written it, it's ready to share with all of you. And so I figured I'd just hit record and do that. So all right, happy Thanksgiving. I will be touching base before Thanksgiving if all goes well, but we'll see, because I am doing some traveling. And yeah,